When the COVID-19 pandemic struck, people panicked, cleared the shelves, and we were told to stop hoarding because there was plenty of food for everyone, but we just needed to calm down. And it does actually seem to have stabilized somewhat. But what just happened? And where are we now? A lot just happened. It's the first global pandemic in our lifetimes, and we're in uncharted waters here. Probably the biggest shock to the food system in Canada arising from the COVID-19 and our responses to it has been in our distribution system, the system that brings the food to the supermarket for us. And at first, there was panic buying. It was probably the most immediate thing that we saw and commented upon. And we saw the shelves were just emptying faster than they could be stocked. And it went on for a little while. That's partly because people were used to eating out, was suddenly having to eat in the store. It's because we all went to the store thinking I better buy 1 or 2 weeks of food in case I get quarantined. And then there was a little bit of exaggeration added in just by human psychology where, you know, if there's only one pizza left in that freezer, you think, well, I want to buy that pizza in case there's none left when I come back again next week. So everyone panicked. And that's what creates this problem of hoarding, meaning buying more food than you actually need. A bit like an accident, you know, where the accident happens on the highway, it might stop the cars right there, but then it ripples back. And sometimes you're stuck in traffic 2 or 3 hours later, far from where the accident happened. So where did the car crash happen? It actually happened more in that supply system, the place where you decided to for example, ship out flour to people and businesses around the country. So when the $90 billion a year restaurant sector of Canada is shut down, suddenly there's no bakeries, no restaurants, no one's buying flour in huge 100-kilo bags. What they're doing is, what Canadians are doing is trying to access flour to bake some bread at home. And they want 1, 5, maybe 10-kilo bags of flour to do it. And so the system has to be able to not, first of all, put the flour into smaller bags, which means actually acquiring bags to put the flour in. And then it needs to get that out through a much different distribution chain. So ultimately, that's a problem you can solve. And you can see for most Canadians, it's been solved. There are now bags of flour again on the shelves. And there's not a lot of reports of flour going to waste. Probably some is, but for the most part, we've been able to redirect. What about the dairy plants? Why are milk farmers throwing milk down the drain? Why are the pigs having to be euthanized? And we know that there are large queues at the food banks and lots of people who can no longer afford to eat the food that they need. Sadly, it's not as easy as we'd like to bring surplus in one place to the need in another. Our food supply chain is complicated for a reason. So if we were, you know, growing tomatoes in our backyard and we found we have more than we could eat, we can find a neighbor, we can find a family member, we might can a few. It's not really a problem. But at a large scale, it becomes impossible to exchange food this way. The dairy farmer can't just bring unpasteurized milk to the supermarket. The hog farmer can't just bring a pig to the food bank and say, here's bacon for the next people that walk in the door. You actually have quite a specialized system in place to, you know, slaughter the animals if it's a pig, to make sure that that's done in a way that's sanitary. Then you need to render the meat, provide it into packages, and all the while it has to stay at a good temperature, it has to be carefully looked after. And what we've created by centralizing system is something that's really quite cheap for consumers. It's not been as good for farmers in terms of the prices they get, but it has worked. It's made a lot of money for the processors themselves. And in a densely populated area, it means lots of choice. But there's no fail-safe in this system. Because of the lack of competition, especially at the processing side, it's been possible to squeeze a lot of efficiency there. But the flip side of that has been no place to go when the system breaks. And in a highly specialized system, you can't adapt as quickly. You can't step out of the chain and start to think how else you could get food to people. So the potato farmers who are sitting on all those extra potatoes and encouraging everyone to eat more French fries, can't we just do that and tell ourselves we're doing a great thing? Unfortunately, those farmers are producing those potatoes for a particular processor who has a particular product in mind. And for most of us, it's just not what we want to do with the potatoes. And so this is part of that specialized system that we've calibrated things in a very particular way. And we can't just move sideways into a different, say, more localized food distribution system without making other changes to what we grow, all the way through to how do we sell it, or how does the consumer get access to that food. So the farmers are doing what they're meant to do, producing this food, and we've got them producing it, constantly. And every day it's ready, the farmer wants to move that out and move it to the next place, because storing the food when it's ready becomes an expense. So right now, if the meat plant can't take your pig, for example, you have to make a decision. You're either going to kill it and store it, pay for it somehow and pay for the refrigeration. You're going to keep feeding it, which is going to cost you money every day in feed, and eventually your pig isn't going to be worth as much because it will be too old. So you're just going to have to burn it. And I'm afraid for many farmers, it's cheaper to lose the crop than it is to try and figure out a way to store it. And you also can't push pause. This issue with agriculture always, you can't ask the corn to stop growing. You can't tell the pig to stop fattening. You have a system in place that doesn't allow you to change things very quickly. So what we need are ways to manage that risk differently, to share it differently. That's the idea behind fair trade. It's the idea behind a community-supported agriculture program. These are ways in which the consumers and producers get together and share some of the risk. So has anything good come out of all of this? What could we learn? I think if everybody during this COVID crisis had gone home and planted a few seeds and thought a bit about what the food they could grow at home, it would be a fantastic change. And it's not because I think that suddenly we're all going to feed ourselves, or even in our neighborhoods and in our provinces, feed ourselves completely. It's actually not my vision of the food system. But it teaches you so much about why the food system matters, how satisfying it is to grow food, and how complicated it is. You can have mini versions of the drought, the overabundance at the wrong time, the failure, the pest infestation. You see lots of things happen in your little home garden that teach you something about the work that goes into our food that we don't learn if we're just buying all the time at the supermarket. But I think the other thing we learn is that efficiency can be, well, I would say it's overrated. Perhaps a better way to say it is that efficiency needs to take account of more elements. It's not just about the price the consumer pays at the end. It has to be about decent work. It has to be about farmers getting a price that's fair. Efficiency can't come at the expense of resilience. We need a system that allows us to face a shock and not create so much waste as a result. There's no reason for that waste except that we don't have enough diversity, enough choices in places where the food could go, and how, more creativity in how food can reach consumers. I think it's really great that we've gotten everyone thinking about food, though, and I think we should really capitalize on this moment. The UN is telling us to build it back better. So let's build it back better deliberately in Canada. How do we want the food system to change? How can we change some of these faults in the system that COVID-19 has brought to light?